Kylie.
Just to be clear on this, you said that obviously you guys want this ceasefire in order to avoid the risk of escalation in the north, but the ceasefire wouldn't actually include any kinetic potential operations in the north, right?
The ceasefire is an agreement between Israel and Hamas. Obviously, the north is a different terrorist organization, Hezbollah. So no, it is a different process. But we believe a ceasefire to the conflict in Gaza unlocks the possibility of further diplomacy in the north.
And then just when it comes to the proposal that's on the table right now, obviously you guys have gone to great lengths to try and pressure regional allies and regional players to put pressure on Hamas to accept the deal. Many of them have put out public statements. I'm wondering if the Biden administration feels like these countries are doing enough privately to pressure Hamas as well.
There are only a few countries in the region that have relationships with Hamas.
Okay, fine. Qatar and Egypt, do you think they're doing enough?
We do. We have seen them exert significant pressure on Hamas. I'm not going to get into the details of that here. We have seen both countries play, I think, an incredibly important role in mediating this deal, in making clear that this deal is in the interests of the Palestinian people and doing so appropriately.
And what can you just be a little bit more clear about what the consequences for Hamas will be if they don't accept it? I keep saying they must accept it, they must, but like to what end?
I think the consequences are that the war continues. I think that's very clear. Without a ceasefire, the war will continue. And
they don't necessarily want the war to end.
Well,
so that's not.
So that gets to this question I've dealt with a bit the last couple of days, which is, it may be that Sinwar, sitting in a tunnel, believes he's safe and so makes that decision because he thinks, my personal safety is assured, and I don't care about the Palestinian people who continue to die in conflict and who continue to struggle from a lack of humanitarian assistance because of all the barriers and impediments to getting it in and getting it properly distributed. We can't make that decision for him, obviously. All we can do is put a deal on the table that is in the interests of the Palestinian people, hope that enough countries in the world make clear that Hamas ought to take this deal, but ultimately the responsibility for that lies with Hamas, and the responsibility for the consequences if they don't accept this proposal, which, as I have said, and I'll keep harping on it, is nearly identical to one they said they would agree to. The consequences are rest with Hamas if they decline to now take it.
But will there also be consequences for Hamas outside of the battlefield if they don't accept this deal?
What do you mean? You mean for the Hamas operatives that are not inside Gaza? So look, Hamas is a designated terrorist organization. We have long made clear there ought to be consequences for members of Hamas outside of Gaza who are engaged in terrorist activities. I don't have anything to preview at this time.
And then just one more line of questioning. We've now seen, I think it's like 9 or 10 resignations of State Department officials, USAID officials, protesting this administration's approach to the war. I wonder if any of those resignations have had any impact on the administration's policy.
We certainly understand that people have incredibly strong feelings about this proposal. That includes people, obviously, in senior officials in this government have incredibly strong feelings about the conflict in Gaza. And we listen to people. We want to hear their opinions. We want to hear the expertise that they bring to bear. But ultimately, it is the president, the secretary, other senior officials that make the decisions about what the policy of the United States ought to be. But I would say to all of those who disagree or have disagreed with the policy that the United States has pursued, look at the work that we have done to try and get a ceasefire in Gaza, to get the proposal that's on the table to the line and then over the line. This isn't work that started last Friday when the president laid out this proposal. This is work that has been going on for months to try to find a way to get a ceasefire and bring a durable end to this conflict. It is what we have been focused on. It's not always apparent, it's not always evident to the public, but we have been trying to find a way to end this conflict in a way that is durable and lasting, that doesn't ensure that Israel is fighting another war against the Palestinian people, and that Israel is fighting another war against the Palestinian people in 3 months or 6 months or even a year or 2 years, and in a way that provides real security for Palestinians and Israelis alike. Yeah.
You just said it doesn't ensure that Israel is going to fight a war against the Palestinian people. I thought the whole point was that they're not fighting the Palestinian people.
It is a good correction. It is a good correction, Matt. I thank you. It is a war against Hamas. That unfortunately has had tragic consequences for the Palestinian people, but of course.
Can I just follow up on a point that it wasn't, I don't think, a slip of the tongue. So you've said this before in relation to Kylie's question, which is that you say that Hamas and Sinwar should bear in mind that what should draw them to a ceasefire is that Palestinian people are being killed. But your position is that no civilians, no Palestinian civilians should be being killed. So why do you raise that point, as a point of pressure on Hamas?
It is just a point of actual fact.
But the
proposal
should not be being
of course,
killed.
Of course,
but the fact you're raising it, the U.S. government raises this as a point of pressure on Hamas.
The proposal on the table is a ceasefire. A ceasefire to a war that has led to thousands of innocent Palestinians been killed.
Yeah, and your position is that innocent civilians should not be being killed.
Of course,
you raise this.
Hold on, Tommy.
You've done this before, and so have other U.S.
Absolutely,
officials.
they should not be killed, but they are being killed in a war, and we want to see that war end. And if Hamas accepted the proposal, the war would come to an immediate halt for at least 6 weeks, and we would try to turn into something more.
But
durable.
it just feels rather contradictory if your position is that Palestinian civilians should not be being killed, to raise that as a specific point of pressure on Hamas to come to a ceasefire.
It is acknowledging the obvious reality, the harsh reality of this conflict. It is not at all an endorsement of the tragic consequences. It's an acknowledgement of reality. The president talked about this too. We've seen tremendous death and destruction over the past 8 months. We want to avoid that going forward, and the way to do that is to get a ceasefire.